I went to a new gynecologist because the pain was slicing through me like a knife. He frowned at the ultrasound screen and asked who had treated me before. I said my husband. He is the most respected gynecologist in the city. The doctor went quiet for a long moment, then looked me dead in the eye and said, "We need to run tests right away. What I am seeing inside you should not be there." My name is Regina King. I am 65 years old, and this is the story of how I discovered the man I shared my bed with for 40 years was turning me into a chemical puppet to steal my empire. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you are watching from and subscribe to the channel. We are creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. The waiting room of Dr. Kwame Osei was modest, nothing like the marble-floored private practice my husband Marcus ran downtown, but I needed discretion. For 2 years I had been losing my mind, literally, forgetting keys, leaving the stove on, screaming at my employees for no reason. Marcus had been so gentle, so patient. He diagnosed me with early-onset dementia. He said I needed rest. He said I needed to sign over power of attorney so he could protect our assets. I almost believed him until the pain started. A sharp, twisting agony in my lower abdomen that Marcus dismissed as phantom pains from my aging body. But pain is the one thing that never lies. Dr. Osei came back into the room. He did not look like a man about to deliver good news. He was young Ghanaian, with eyes that seemed too old for his face. He put a photo on the light board. "Mrs. King, you said your husband manages your hormone replacement therapy personally, is that correct?" I nodded. "He gives me injections every week." Dr. Osei pointed to a small dark shadow on the grainy image. "That is not a fibroid, and it is not a cyst. That is a subdermal implant located high in your uterine wall. It is releasing a synthetic compound usually used to suppress violent outbursts in institutionalized patients. It causes confusion, memory loss, and muscle weakness. If it stays in there another month, your heart will simply stop." The room spun. Not from the dementia, from the rage. My husband, the man I built King Crown Real Estate with, the man who held my hand at church every Sunday, he was not treating me. He was assassinating me, slowly, painfully, and making me thank him for it. I looked at Dr. Osei. He looked furious. He said, "Mrs. King, your husband is not a doctor. He is a monster. He is turning you into a chemical puppet." "Call the police," I said. He reached for the phone, but I stopped him. My hand was shaking, but my voice was steady for the first time in months. "No. If we call them now, he will use his connections. He will say I am crazy. He will say I did it to myself." I stood up and smoothed my skirt. "I need that image, doctor, and I need you to lie for me, because I am going home, and I am going to bury him." I sat in my Mercedes outside Dr. Osei's clinic and watched the rain hit the windshield. My hands gripped the leather steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. For the first time in 2 years, the fog in my brain lifted. It was like a curtain being ripped down. I thought back to the beginning, the charity gala 2 years ago. I was on stage about to announce the scholarship fund. I froze. I could not remember the name of the foundation I started 20 years ago. The room went silent. Marcus stepped up beside me, his hand on the small of my back, squeezing just a little too hard. He smiled at the crowd and said, "My wife has been working too hard, please forgive her." Everyone clapped. Everyone thought he was a saint. I felt small. I felt broken. Then the keys, the missing contracts, the outbursts where I would scream at my assistant for things she never did. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought my brain was rotting inside my skull. And Marcus, my Marcus, the man who swore before God to cherish me. He was there for every moment, not to help, but to document. He would look at me with that practiced medical concern, that sad tilt of his head, and say, "Regina, darling, I think it is time we discuss the power of attorney again. You are not yourself." He was right. I was not myself. I was a science experiment. He used his medical license as a weapon. He knew exactly what that synthetic hormone would do. It mimics dementia symptoms perfectly. Paranoia, confusion, emotional instability. Every Sunday night he would give me my special vitamin injection. He said it was B12 to help with my energy. He said he was taking care of me because he loved me. I would thank him. I would kiss his cheek and thank him for poisoning me. He did not need to push me down the stairs to get my $60 million estate. He just needed to make the world believe I was incompetent. He gaslighted me with chemistry. He drugged his wife of 40 years like a stray dog he wanted to put down. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. He wanted a crazy wife. He wanted a woman who could not remember her own name. Well, he was about to find out that Regina King might forget where her keys are, but she never forgets a debt. And Marcus Thorne owed me a debt that he was going to pay with everything he had. Dr. Osei reached for the landline on his desk, his hand trembling with righteous anger. Mrs. King, this is assault with a deadly weapon. This is attempted murder. I am calling the police right now. He started to dial 911. I reached across the desk and put my hand over his. My grip was strong, surprisingly strong for a woman who was supposed to be withering away. "Put the phone down, son," I said, my voice low and hard. He looked at me like I was the one who was crazy. "Mrs. King, you are in immediate danger. You cannot go back there." I shook my head slowly. "You do not know Marcus Thorne. He plays golf with the police chief every Saturday morning at the country club. He delivered the district attorney's twin daughters. He is the godfather to half the city council. If you call the police now, he will come here with a sad smile and a file full of forged consent forms. He will say poor Regina is confused again. He will say, I begged for this experimental treatment to save my memory. And they will believe him. Because he is the great Dr. Thorne, the pillar of the community, and I am just the old woman losing her mind." I stood up from the exam chair. My knees felt steady for the first time in months. The rage was a fire in my belly, burning away the synthetic fog that had clouded my judgment. I need to catch him red-handed. I need to catch him with the knife in his hand and the malice in his heart. I need the world to see the monster beneath the white coat. To do that, I have to go back to that house. I have to let him think he is winning. Dr. Osei looked at me with genuine fear in his eyes. "He will kill you, Mrs. King. If he suspects you know he will accelerate the timeline." "No, he won't," I said. "He needs me alive until the anniversary party next week. He needs me to sign the trust transfer documents in front of his lawyer and the board of directors. He is greedy, and his greed will make him patient. That gives us 7 days. I need you to do 2 things for me, doctor. First, you are going to remove this thing from me right now, but you are going to leave a small scar that looks like a biopsy so he does not suspect it is gone. Second, you are going to print out a medical file, a fake one. It needs to say that my brain scans show rapid, irreversible deterioration. It needs to say that my cognitive function is less than 30%. Make it look hopeless. Make it look like I'm already gone. When he sees that he will get careless." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I will do it. But if you do not call me every 12 hours, I am sending the police to your door myself." "Fair enough," I said. I walked over to the mirror on the wall. I looked a mess. Mascara running down my cheeks, eyes red and puffy. I took a tissue and wiped my face clean. I adjusted my wig, making sure every strand was perfect. It cost $3,000, and I was not going to let Marcus ruin it. I straightened my spine, pulling my shoulders back the way my mother taught me. They forgot who built the kingdom. They forgot that before I was a wife and a mother, I was a survivor. They thought they were putting down a sick dog. But the lioness is not dead yet. She was just sleeping, and now she is awake and she is hungry. The iron gates of King Estates swung open slowly. Usually seeing that winding driveway and the massive colonial columns filled me with pride. I bought this land 30 years ago when it was just a swamp and a dream. Today it looked like a prison. I parked my car around the back so he would not hear the engine. I slipped my heels off and walked in stocking feet across the marble foyer. Silence. The kind of expensive silence that hides dirty secrets. I saw a sliver of light coming from the library. The door was cracked open just an inch. I moved closer. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird, but I forced my breathing to slow down. I needed to hear this. "Yes, the dosage is peaking." Marcus' voice drifted into the hallway, smooth and cold. I held my breath. No complications yet. She is compliant, lethargic, just like we planned. A pause. I pressed my ear closer to the wood. "Do not worry about the notary. Next week is the end game. After the party, we drive her straight to the facility. By Monday morning, she will be locked in the memory care unit, and we will have the power of signature to sell the commercial lots." My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a gasp. He was not just stealing the company. He was selling off the prime commercial real estate I had earmarked for the community center. And he was going to lock me away in a home until I rotted. The betrayal tasted like bile in my throat. I wanted to kick that door open. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear his eyes out. But I remembered Dr. Osei. I remembered the plan. If I attacked him now, he would win. He would call the paramedics and say I was having a violent episode. I had to play the part. I had to be the confused old woman he created. I stepped back from the door. I grabbed a heavy crystal vase sitting on the hallway console table. I closed my eyes and let it slip from my fingers. The crash was deafening. I heard Marcus curse. The library door flew open. He stood there, phone still in his hand, eyes wide with annoyance that instantly shifted to practiced concern when he saw me swaying in the hallway. "Regina," he said, sliding the phone into his pocket. "Good Lord, what happened?" I blinked at him, making my eyes unfocused. I pointed a shaking finger at the empty air behind him. "Who were you talking to, Marcus?" I heard voices. "Is my father in there?" Marcus sighed, the sound of a man burdened by a heavy cross. He walked over and took my arm, his grip firm and possessive. "Oh, Regina, your father has been dead for 20 years. There is no one here. You are having another episode." "But I heard them," I whispered, leaning my weight against him, forcing myself not to recoil at his touch. "They were talking about selling the land." He led me away from the shattered glass. "Shh. No one is selling anything, darling. You are just confused. The medication must be wearing off. Let us get you upstairs. I have your special vitamins ready." I let him guide me up the stairs. I let him think I was weak. I let him think his gaslighting was working. He smiled at me, that benevolent smile of a shark circling a wounded seal. He thought he was walking me to my doom. He had no idea I was walking him to his. The sun was barely up, but the vultures were already circling. I walked down the grand staircase, my hand trailing along the mahogany banister I had polished with my own hands for 30 years. I heard voices in the living room, not the soft murmur of family, the sharp clicking of heels, and the low drone of a business transaction. I stopped halfway down. There was Tiffany, my son Dante's wife. She was wearing a white dress that cost more than my first car, walking around my living room like she owned the deed. Behind her was a man in a cheap suit holding a laser measure. He was pointing it at my crown moldings. I leaned forward just enough to hear. Tiffany was laughing, that tinkling fake laugh that always set my teeth on edge. She said, "Oh yes, the architecture is stunning, but honestly, it is too much house for one old woman. My mother-in-law," she lowered her voice to a theatrical whisper, "she is not lucid anymore. It is tragic, really. We are moving her to a facility next week. We need to list the property immediately to cover her medical costs. Marcus wants a quick cash sale." My blood ran cold. Medical costs. My husband was poisoning me for free, and they wanted to sell my $60 million estate to pay for it. They were stripping the meat off my bones before I was even dead. I took a breath. I fixed my face into the mask of the confused invalid. I shuffled down the last few steps, letting my expensive silk robe drag a little on the floor. I walked into the room, blinking against the morning light. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling just the right amount. "Why are you measuring my walls?" The man jumped, looking guilty. But Tiffany, she did not flinch. She turned around slowly, a smirk playing on her red lips. She looked at me with eyes that held no warmth, no respect, no fear, just pure, unadulterated contempt. She walked over to me, clicking her tongue like I was a naughty toddler who had wandered out of the nursery. "Oh, Mom," she said, her voice dripping with syrup. "Did you forget again? I told you yesterday, this is just my friend. He is admiring the house." She reached out and patted my cheek. Her nails were long and sharp. "You really should be resting, Mom. You know how you get when you miss your nap. You start imagining things." I looked at the man. He would not meet my eyes. He knew this was wrong, but he smelled a commission. I looked back at Tiffany. She was smiling, but her eyes said, "Go back to your room, old woman, and die quietly." I wanted to slap that smile off her face. I wanted to tell her that I bought this house before she was even born. I wanted to tell her that the only thing I forgot was why I let my son marry a woman with a heart made of ice and ambition. But I forced a weak smile. I let my shoulders slump. "Oh," I said, "a friend. That is nice. I thought you were selling the house." Tiffany laughed again, louder this time. "Selling the house? Oh, Mom, you are so funny. Go back upstairs. I will bring you some tea." I turned around and walked away. I felt her eyes boring into my back. I heard her say to the man, "See what I mean? She is completely gone." I walked up the stairs, one slow step at a time. Let them think I am gone. Let them think I am a ghost haunting my own halls, because ghosts see everything, and ghosts do not forgive. I sat in the high-backed leather chair behind my mahogany desk, the seat of power I had occupied for 40 years. My son Dante walked in. He looked so much like his father, tall, handsome, and weak. He was wearing a suit that I paid for and a watch that I bought him for his 30th birthday. He did not look happy to see me. He looked like a man who had been summoned to the principal's office. "Dante," I said, keeping my voice firm, steady. "I am feeling much better today. The fog has lifted. I want you to bring me the quarterly financials for King Crown. I need to review the recent acquisitions." I watched his face closely. I was throwing him a lifeline. One last chance to be my son. One last chance to show me that there was still a man inside that expensive suit who respected his mother. He didn't even hesitate. He let out a long, dramatic sigh and ran a hand over his face. "Mom, please. Not this again. We have discussed this. You are not well." "I am perfectly well, Dante," I said, leaning forward. "I built this company from nothing. I know every brick and every building we own. I just want to see the books. Why is that a problem?" He walked over to the window, refusing to look me in the eye. "It is a problem because you get confused. You start yelling about numbers that don't exist. Tiffany said you accused the housekeeper of stealing silver yesterday. Dad says your paranoia is getting worse. You are just going to make a mess of things again," Tiffany said. Dad said he was a parrot repeating the words of the people who were destroying me. He did not have a single original thought in his head. "Dante, look at me," I commanded. He turned slowly, his eyes full of pity and impatience. "I am your mother. Do you really believe I am crazy? Do you really think I am incapable of reading a balance sheet?" He crossed his arms defensive. "Mom, the doctors agree. Dad agrees. Why do you have to be so difficult? Just rest. Let us handle the business. We are doing this for your own good. Stop trying to ruin everything. Ruin everything." That was the phrase that cut the deepest. He did not care about my health. He cared about the inheritance. He was afraid I would find out he was running my company into the ground. He was afraid I would stop the cash flow that paid for his wife's shopping sprees and his country club memberships. I looked at him and I saw the truth. He was not a victim. He was not being manipulated against his will. He was a willing participant. He had chosen his side. He chose the easy money. He chose the wife who hated me and the father who drugged me. I leaned back in my chair and forced a small, trembling smile. "You are right, son," I said softly, letting the mask of the frail old woman slip back into place. "I am sorry. I just wanted to help. My head is hurting again." Relief washed over his face. It was pathetic. "Thanks, Mom. Just relax, okay? We have got everything under control." He walked out of the room, closing the door behind him. I sat there in the silence and felt my heart break into two distinct pieces. One piece died for the little boy I used to hold. The other piece hardened into stone. I was truly alone in this house. My husband was a murderer. My daughter-in-law was a vulture. And my son was a coward who would sell me for a quiet life. I wiped a single tear from my cheek. "Goodbye, Dante. You just wrote yourself out of the will." The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 2 a.m., but my eyes were wide open. I was wandering the halls of my own mausoleum, like a restless spirit checking the locks, pacing the floors, trying to outrun the rage that was boiling in my blood. That was when I heard it. A soft, muffled sound coming from the back of the house near the old servants' quarters. It was a wing of the estate we stopped using years ago when I hired the professional cleaning service. It was cold back there and drafty. It should have been empty, but the sound was unmistakable. It was the sound of a child trying to cry without being heard. I moved silently down the corridor, my bare feet making no sound on the hardwood. The door to the old pantry was closed. I saw a small latch had been installed on the outside, a simple sliding bolt high up where a child could not reach. My hand trembled as I slid it back. I pushed the door open, and the sliver of moonlight from the hallway cut through the darkness. There, curled up on a pile of old blankets, was my grandson Leo, my beautiful 7-year-old boy who usually had a smile that could light up a room. But he was not smiling now. He was huddled in the corner clutching a box of dry crackers, his face streaked with tears and crumbs. When he saw me, he scrambled backward, pressing himself against the dusty shelves, his eyes wide with terror. "Please, Grandma," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Please do not tell Mommy. I promised I would be quiet. I just got so hungry." I fell to my knees, regardless of the pain in my joints. I pulled him into my arms. He felt thin, too thin. He felt like a bird made of hollow bones. "Leo, baby, what are you doing in here? Why are you eating dry crackers in the dark?" He buried his face in my neck, smelling of dust and fear. Mommy Tiffany got mad. I spilled grape juice on the white rug in the sunroom. She said I ruined it. She said pigs do not deserve dinner. She put me in here to think about what I did. My blood ran cold. The white rug. That rug cost $12,000. My grandson was starving because of a rug. But what he said next froze the marrow in my bones. She said, "I have to get used to it, Grandma." She said, "As soon as you go away to the special hospital for your brain, she is sending me away too." She said she found a military school in Arizona that fixes bad boys like me. She said Daddy agreed because I am too much like you. Too loud, too dark, too difficult. I held him tighter, rocking him back and forth as the realization hit me like a physical blow. This was not just about the money. It was not just about the real estate or the jewelry or the cars. This was an erasure. Tiffany did not just want my fortune. She wanted to scrub every trace of me from this earth. She hated my son because he was weak, but she hated my grandson because he was mine. She looked at his beautiful black skin and his bright eyes, and she saw a stain on her perfect white life. She wanted to ship him off to the desert and forget he ever existed. I kissed the top of Leo's head. I smoothed his hair back. "Listen to me, Leo. You are not going anywhere. No one is sending you away." I stood up, lifting him into my arms. He was heavy, but my anger gave me strength I did not know I had. I carried him to my room and tucked him into my big bed. I watched him sleep, and I made a promise to the darkness. They wanted to erase the King legacy. They wanted to prune the family tree until only they remained. Well, they forgot one thing. You do not prune a tree by cutting off the roots. You prune it by cutting off the rot. And I was about to perform surgery. I waited until the house settled into that heavy, suffocating silence that comes around 3 a.m. Even the monsters have to sleep sometime. I went to the back of my walk-in closet and reached deep inside my old winter boots. My fingers brushed against the cold plastic of the cheap burner phone I had bought with cash at a convenience store 3 days ago. I had felt paranoid buying it then. Now I felt like a prophet. I dialed the number I had memorized years ago. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I held my breath, praying she had not changed her number, praying she would answer an unknown caller at this ungodly hour. "Hello." Her voice was thick with sleep and suspicion. "Maya, baby girl, it is Auntie Regina." There was a long silence on the other end, then a cold, sharp intake of breath. "Mrs. King, I do not think you should be calling me. Dante made it very clear that I was not welcome in your life anymore. He said my presence was embarrassing to the family brand. He said I was too rough around the edges for the King estate." The pain of that memory stung, but I pushed it aside. "I know what he said, Maya. I know he cut off your tuition. I know he told you I agreed with him. He lied. He lied about everything. Mrs. King, look, I have a torts exam in 6 hours. I really cannot do this right now. Maya, listen to me. I gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. I am not calling to catch up. I am calling because I am being hunted in my own house by my own husband and your cousin. The line went dead silent. The sleep vanished from her voice, instantly replaced by the sharp alertness of a law student who smells blood. What do you mean, hunted? I mean Marcus put a device inside me to make me crazy. I mean they are starving Dante's son in the pantry. I mean they are planning to commit me to an asylum next week so they can sell the land out from under us. I paused, letting the weight of it settle. I need you, Maya. Not the polite little girl I used to buy Easter dresses for. I need the street-smart woman who clawed her way into law school while working 2 jobs. I need the girl Dante called ghetto because she was too smart for his comfort. Auntie, are you sure? Her voice was quiet now, dangerous. I have the ultrasound photos, Maya. I have the bruises on Leo's arms. I am looking at a prison cell they built in my pantry. I am not senile. I am angry. And I am alone. I heard the rustle of sheets on the other end, the sound of someone moving fast. I need someone who is not on the payroll, someone who knows how to dig for dirt and isn't afraid to get their hands muddy. I need family, Maya, real family, not this nest of vipers I have been feeding. I heard the jingle of keys. Open the back service entrance, she said, the one by the kitchen garden. The cameras there have a blind spot if you come in at the right angle. I used to sneak out that way when I was a teenager. You knew about the blind spot. I know a lot of things about that house, Auntie. I will be there in 20 minutes. Keep your phone on. And Auntie, yes, baby girl, if they touch you again, I will burn that whole estate to the ground with them inside. I hung up the phone, and for the first time that night, I smiled. Dante had kicked Maya out because she was tough. He thought he was weeding the garden. He had no idea he had just handed me the only weapon strong enough to break him. The cavalry was coming, and she was bringing the law. The doorbell rang at exactly 10 in the morning, just as the delivery app notification on my burner phone pinged. I was sitting in the sunroom pretending to stare blankly at a garden magazine while Dante and Tiffany argued over catering menus in the living room. Neither of them moved to get the door. They were too important for manual labor. I shuffled my feet, dragging my slippers against the hardwood, making sure I looked every bit the frail, confused old woman they believed me to be. I told them I would get it. Dante waved his hand dismissively without even looking up from his tablet. When I opened the heavy oak door, a young person in a baggy blue delivery uniform stood there. A cap was pulled low over their eyes, and a medical mask covered half their face. They held a greasy paper bag that smelled like fried chicken. But when those eyes met mine, I saw the spark. It was Maya. She did not say a word. She just handed me the bag and tapped it twice with her index finger. I took it, my hands trembling not from age but from adrenaline. I mumbled a thank you and closed the door. I took the bag to the powder room off the foyer and locked the door. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I reached past the container of coleslaw and the biscuits. At the bottom of the bag, wrapped in a napkin, were 3 tiny black cubes, no bigger than a sugar lump, and a digital voice recorder. Maya had come through. These were high-definition wireless cameras with audio capabilities. I slipped them into the deep pockets of my housecoat and flushed the toilet for effect. Now the performance of a lifetime had to begin. I emerged from the bathroom, mumbling to myself a nonsensical song about lost keys and rainy days. I wandered toward the wet bar in the great room. Tiffany was there, pouring herself a mid-morning vodka tonic. She rolled her eyes when she saw me. I pretended to stumble, catching myself on the marble counter. I knocked over a small bowl of decorative lemons. While Tiffany sighed loudly and bent down to pick them up, complaining about my clumsiness, I slid the first camera into the dense foliage of a potted fern on the bar. The lens pointed directly at the liquor cabinet where they stood every night to drink and gloat. Next was the master bedroom, Marcus' bedroom. We had not slept in the same bed for 10 years. He said his snoring bothered me, but I knew he just wanted his privacy for late-night phone calls. I walked in, leaving the door wide open. I started opening drawers, moving shirts around, muttering about finding my husband's favorite tie. I knew he was at the hospital, so I had time, but my skin crawled being in his space. I moved to the nightstand. I tucked the second camera behind the heavy bronze base of his reading lamp, angling it toward the bed and the phone. Every whisper in this room would now be mine. The final target was the study. This was the lion's den. I walked in and almost stopped breathing. The air in there felt heavy with betrayal. I walked to the massive bookshelf behind his desk. I pulled out a few medical journals, letting them fall to the floor, creating a mess to justify my presence if anyone walked in. While I bent down to retrieve them, I wedged the third camera between two leather-bound encyclopedias. It had a perfect view of his computer screen and the two chairs where he conducted his dirty business. I stood up, dusting off my knees. I looked around the room one last time. They thought this house was their fortress. They thought the walls were thick enough to keep their secrets. They were wrong. The walls now had eyes and ears, and the old woman wandering the halls in her slippers was not lost. She was hunting. I sat in the small hidden office Maya had set up in the guest house. It was just a broom closet, really, but she had 3 laptops humming on a folding table, the screens glowing blue in the dim light. I watched over her shoulder as her fingers flew across the keyboard. She was not just my niece anymore. She was a surgeon cutting through the layers of deceit my family had wrapped around me. "We are an auntie," she whispered, her eyes never leaving the screen. "That password you remembered, it still works for the main server." They never changed it. They probably thought you were too senile to remember your own birthday, let alone an admin code from 5 years ago. I leaned closer, squinting at the rows of numbers and file names scrolling past. "What are you seeing, Maya? Tell me." She stopped typing. Her hand froze over the mouse. "Oh my God. Dante, what have you done?" She clicked on a folder labeled Miscellaneous Investments. A series of transaction logs opened up. Red numbers. So many red numbers. Maya turned to me, her face pale in the monitor's glow. "Auntie, the operating capital for King Crown. It is gone. Gone." I repeated the word, feeling it land like a stone in my stomach. "What do you mean, gone?" "We had $12 million in reserve last quarter." Maya pointed at the screen. "Look at these transfers, starting 6 months ago. 500,000 here, 2 million there, all sent to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Singapore, all labeled as consulting fees or digital asset acquisition. Digital asset acquisition." I felt a cold fury rising. My son was buying imaginary money with my real empire. Maya opened another window. "Here is where it went." She pulled up a profile for a company called Future Wealth Crypto. The CEO is listed as Chad Miller. Chad Miller. The name sounded familiar. Then I remembered. Tiffany's brother. The one who wore loafers without socks and called everyone bro. The one Dante played poker with every Friday night. He siphoned it all, Auntie Maya said, her voice shaking. He bought NFTs, cryptocurrency, speculative tech stocks that crashed 3 months ago. He lost everything. The company is not just in trouble. It is insolvent. If the creditors find out, they will seize the buildings. They will seize everything. The puzzle pieces slammed into place with a sickening thud. That was why they were so desperate. That was why the timeline had accelerated. It wasn't just greed, it was panic. Dante had gambled away his inheritance before I was even dead, and now he needed to sell my house and liquidate my personal trusts to cover the hole before the auditors came next month. "They are drowning," I whispered, staring at the evidence of my son's stupidity. "And they are using my body as a life raft." Maya looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "Auntie, we have enough here to send Dante to prison for embezzlement. We can destroy him." I looked at the screen, at the ruin of 40 years of hard work. I thought of Dante as a little boy holding my hand at construction sites wearing his little hard hat. I thought of the man downstairs drinking my scotch and planning my demise. "Print it all, Maya," I said, my voice ice cold. "Print every single page. I want physical copies. We are not just going to send him to prison. We are going to make sure he knows exactly why he is going there. He bet against the house. And the house always wins, especially when I am the one dealing the cards." The silver tray rattled slightly as Marcus entered the bedroom. It was the sound of my execution, or so he thought. I sat up against the pillows, my hands trembling not from fear, but from the effort of holding back the urge to strangle him. My phone buzzed under the duvet. One vibration. That was the signal from Maya. She was watching the live feed from the camera I had hidden in his study. She had seen him crush the heavy sedatives into the solution. She had recorded him measuring a dose that would turn a horse into a vegetable. "Time for your vitamins, my love," Marcus cooed, sitting on the edge of the bed. The syringe was filled with a clear liquid that looked innocent, but was designed to enslave me. "This will help you sleep before the big day tomorrow. We want you rested for the party, don't we?" I looked at him. The man I had loved. The man I had built a life with. His eyes were kind, but behind them was a glacier. I reached for the glass of water on the nightstand and let my hand spasm. The glass shattered against the hardwood floor, soaking the expensive Persian rug. "Oh no," I cried out, my voice thick with fake distress. "I am so clumsy, Marcus. I am so sorry. Look at what I have done." Marcus sighed, a sound of pure irritation masked as patience. "It is okay, Regina. Don't move. You will cut yourself." He turned toward the bathroom to grab a towel. "That was my window. 3 seconds." My hand moved with the speed of the woman who used to run a $60 million empire. I reached into the deep pocket of my robe, pulled out the identical syringe Dr. Osai had prepared, filled with harmless saline, and swapped it with the one on the tray. I slid the poison into my pocket just as Marcus turned back. He wiped the floor quickly, his movements jerky and annoyed. "Let us just get this over with," he muttered. He rolled up my sleeve. I felt the pinch of the needle. I watched the saline enter my veins, knowing he thought he was erasing my mind. I waited 10 seconds, then let my eyelids flutter. I let my head loll back against the headboard. I slowed my breathing, mimicking the drop into unconsciousness he was expecting. "Regina," he whispered, poking my shoulder. I did not move. I kept my face slack, my body heavy. He stood over me for a minute, checking my pulse. Then he walked to the window and pulled out his phone. "It is done," he said, his voice low and triumphant. "The dose is heavy. It kicked in fast. By tomorrow afternoon she will be pliable. She will be walking and talking, but she won't know what year it is. She will sign the transfer papers on stage in a twilight state. It will look like she is just overcome with emotion." He laughed softly, a sound that made my skin crawl. "Yes, Tiffany. The old mule is finally broken. We win. Tomorrow night we own the kingdom." He left the room, closing the door with a soft click. I lay there in the dark, listening to the silence of the house. He thought the old mule was broken. He forgot that mules kick. And tomorrow I was going to kick him so hard he would never stand up again. The blue light of the laptop screen was the only thing illuminating the small room in the guest house, but it was enough to show the horror on Maya's face. She handed me the headphones, her hands shaking slightly. "You need to hear this, Auntie," she said. "It is from the camera on the patio, recorded 20 minutes ago." I put the headphones on. On the screen, Tiffany was pacing by the pool, a glass of wine in her hand. She was on the phone with Dante. I knew it was him because she was using that whining, manipulative tone she reserved just for him. "Baby, listen to me," she said, taking a long sip of wine. "I already booked the flights. First class to Zurich, leaving Tuesday night. Yes, one way. We are not coming back to this dump. Once your mother is locked away and the power of attorney kicks in, we liquidate the assets and disappear." There was a pause as she listened to my son on the other end. Then she laughed, a cruel sound that cut through me. "What about Leo? Are you kidding me, Dante? We are not taking him. He is baggage. He is loud, he is needy, and he does not fit in Europe. I already faxed the enrollment forms to that military school in Arizona. The van comes to pick him up Monday morning. He will be out of our hair for good." I waited. I waited to hear my son scream. I waited to hear him defend his own flesh and blood. I waited to hear the man I raised tell this woman that he would never abandon his child. But all I heard through the speakers was Tiffany saying, "Good boy, I knew you would see it my way. Just make sure the old hag signs the papers tomorrow, love you." She hung up and swirled her wine, looking at her reflection in the sliding glass door. She looked happy. She looked like a woman who had just won the lottery. I took the headphones off and laid them gently on the table. Maya was watching me, waiting for the explosion, waiting for the tears. But my eyes were dry. I had cried enough for Dante Thorne. I had cried when he scraped his knee as a boy. I had cried when he graduated college. I had cried when he married this viper. But I was done crying. A strange calm settled over me. It was the calm of a judge passing a death sentence. They were not just stealing my money, they were discarding my grandson like he was a piece of trash. They were going to fly to Europe on my dime while my baby Leo was shipped off to a boot camp in the desert. I looked at Maya. She looked ready to fight. I reached out and took her hand. Her skin was warm and real, unlike the cold snake sleeping in the main house. "Keep that recording, Maya," I said, my voice steady and low. "Keep it safe. Put it right next to the ultrasound photos and the bank transfer logs." She nodded, fierce and loyal. "What is the plan, Auntie?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the main house where the lights were finally going out. "Tomorrow is my 40th wedding anniversary. Marcus thinks it is his coronation. He thinks he is going to stand on that stage and accept the sympathy of the city while he buries his wife." I turned back to Maya, and for the first time in months, I felt like the woman who built an empire from scratch. I felt like the Regina King who scared contractors and charmed investors. "Tomorrow is not a celebration," I said. "It is a funeral. We are going to bury their reputation. We are going to bury their future. And we are going to do it in front of everyone they ever tried to impress. Get your suit ready, baby girl. We have a party to crash." I did not sleep that night. I sat in the guest house with Maya, surrounded by the physical proof of my family's treachery. The sun was just starting to bleed over the horizon, painting the sky the color of a fresh bruise when I picked up the phone. I did not need the burner phone for this. I wanted these calls on the record. First, I called Arthur Banks. He had been the chief legal counsel for King Crown since before Dante was born. He was a man of few words and even fewer smiles, but his loyalty was carved in granite. "Arthur it is, Regina. No, do not ask how I am. Just listen. Check your secure email. Maya just sent you a file. It contains evidence of corporate embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder." There was a long silence on the other end, then the sound of Arthur typing furiously. "Regina!" His voice was breathless. "This is Dante. And Marcus, these documents, the shell companies, the medical reports. Regina, this is a life sentence." "I know, Arthur," I said, my voice flat. "I need you to draft the revocation of all power of attorney documents immediately. I need you to prepare restraining orders and a petition for emergency custody of Leo, and I need you at the Ritz-Carlton tonight at 7 sharp. Bring the papers, and bring your best suit. We are going to court, but first we are going to put on a show." Next, I called Sheriff John Miller. We had gone to high school together 40 years ago. He was the only man in this county Marcus could not buy, because Marcus had once called John's wife help at a charity dinner. John never forgot. "John, it is Regina King. I need a favor." "No, not a ticket. I need you to arrest my husband and my son." I told him everything. The implant, the drugs, the starvation of my grandson, the plan to ship him off. I could hear John breathing hard on the other end, a low rumble of anger building in his chest. "I will send a squad car now, Regina," he growled. "I will drag them out in their pajamas." "No, John," I said quickly. "Not now. Tonight. They are throwing a party, a celebration of their victory. I want you to walk in right when the confetti falls. I want you to put the cuffs on them in front of the mayor, the city council, and every single person they have been lying to. I want them to fall from the highest height." John chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "You always did have a flair for the dramatic Regina." "All right. I will have my deputies at the service entrance by 6:30. We will wait for your signal." I hung up the phone and looked at Maya. She was pale, but her jaw was set. "We are really doing this, Auntie. We are really going to take them down." I walked over to the mirror. I looked at the woman staring back. The lines on my face were not from age anymore. They were battle scars. I was not the victim they thought they were drugging. I was the executioner they never saw coming. "Get dressed, Maya," I said, turning away from the mirror. "Put on your best dress, the one that makes you look like you own the room. Tonight we are not just guests. We are the main event. And I promise you, by the time the dessert is served, they will wish they had never learned my name." The crystal chandeliers of the Ritz-Carlton ballroom were blinding, hundreds of diamond teardrops reflecting the lies of everyone in the room. I let Marcus guide me through the double mahogany doors. He had his hand under my elbow, gripping it just tight enough to hurt, while looking like he was holding a piece of fragile porcelain. I shuffled my feet. I let my head hang low. I wore the vintage gold silk suit I bought in Paris 20 years ago, but I made sure it hung loose on my frame to emphasize the weight I had lost. The cream of the city was there. Doctors, lawyers, politicians, the people I had spent 40 years charming and negotiating with. I saw the way they looked at us, not with the respect they used to give Regina King, the real estate mogul. They looked at me with pity. Poor Marcus, I heard Mrs. Vanderwall whisper behind her fan. Such a saint taking care of her. It must be so hard watching her fade away. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tell her that the only thing fading away tonight was her husband's investment portfolio, which Dante had probably already embezzled. Tiffany was glowing in a red dress that was cut too low and cost too much. She stood by the champagne tower looking like she had already won the lottery. She caught my eye and winked, a subtle little gesture that said goodbye. Old woman, enjoy the asylum. Dante stood next to her, looking like he had already spent the inheritance. He was sweating despite the air conditioning shifting his weight from foot to foot. He refused to look at me. At least he had the decency to be ashamed. Marcus led me to the velvet chair center stage. He sat me down gently, arranging my skirt like I was a doll. He kissed my forehead. The kiss was dry and cold. Judas kiss. He walked to the podium and the room went silent. The spotlight hit him, and he looked every inch the grieving, devoted husband. Friends, family colleagues, he began, his voice thick with manufactured emotion. 40 years ago, I married a queen. Regina built this family and this company with her bare hands. She was a force of nature. He paused to wipe a fake tear from his eye. The room murmured in sympathy. But as many of you know, time is a cruel thief. My queen is tired. Her mind is wandering into places we cannot follow. It breaks my heart to say this, but Regina needs rest. She needs professional, constant care that I can no longer provide at home. He looked back at me with that sad, practiced smile. Therefore, tonight, with a heavy heart, we are announcing that Regina is stepping down. Effective immediately, our son Dante will take full control of King Crown Enterprises and all associated assets. It is what she would have wanted when she was herself. The applause was polite but hesitant. They bought it. They bought the whole performance. I sat there clutching my purse tight against my stomach. Inside was the switch that would detonate this room. Marcus walked back to me holding a gold pen and a document bound in leather. The transfer papers. "Just sign here, darling," he whispered, leaning in close so the microphone would not pick it up. "Just sign it and you can go to sleep. Do it for Dante. Do it so we can stop pretending." I looked at the pen. I looked at his expectant face. He thought the drugs were coursing through my veins. He thought I was seeing double. But my vision had never been clearer. I held the heavy gold pen in my hand and watched the ink hover over the signature line. The lawyer was sweating. Marcus was practically vibrating with anticipation, his hand resting heavily on my shoulder, pushing me down, urging me to sign my life away. I let my hand tremble violently. I let the pen tip scratch the paper uselessly. Marcus leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear. "Just sign it, Regina," he hissed. "Do it, and you can go rest." I stopped. I froze my hand in midair. The trembling ceased instantly. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cold air of the ballroom. I looked at the document one last time, the transfer of assets, the conservatorship agreement, the death of my legacy. I let the pen drop. It hit the table with the sharp clatter that echoed through the microphone. Marcus frowned, his grip on my shoulder, tightening. "Regina, what are you doing? Pick it up." I stood up. I did not struggle. I did not wobble. I stood up with the grace and power of a woman who had carried steel beams on her back. I shrugged my shoulder violently, dislodging his hand. He stumbled back a step, shock replacing the arrogance on his face. "Get your hands off me, Marcus," I said. My voice was not the whisper of a sick old woman. It was the boom of a CEO addressing a boardroom. It rang through the speakers, clear and sharp. The room gasped. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Tiffany dropped her glass of champagne. It shattered, but no one looked at it. They were all looking at me. "Regina, sit down." Marcus stammered, reaching for me again, his eyes darting to the confused guests. "You are having an episode. You are confused." I snatched the microphone from the podium stand. "I am not confused, Marcus," I said, stepping away from him, taking center stage. "I have never been more lucid in my life. You all came here tonight to witness a transition. You came to see the end of an era. You came to pity poor Regina King, the woman who lost her mind." I walked to the edge of the stage, looking down at the faces of my so-called friends. Well, save your pity, because the only thing I lost was my trust in the man standing behind me. Marcus lunged for the microphone, but my security detail, the men I had hired that morning, stepped out from the shadows and blocked him. He stood there, mouth open, looking like a fish on a hook. Before I sign anything, I continued, my voice rising with the tide of my anger. "I want to show you all something. We are celebrating 40 years of marriage tonight, 40 years of trust. I want everyone to see the special anniversary gift my husband gave me, the gift he hid so carefully that even I did not know I had it." I looked up at the darkened control booth balcony. I raised my hand. Maya hit it. The massive projection screen behind me flickered to life. The room went pitch black, save for the giant glowing image that appeared. It was the ultrasound, grainy and stark. The foreign object in my uterus loomed on the screen 10 feet tall, a black spider in the gray web of my body. Next to it, Maya projected the chemical analysis report, highlighting the synthetic hormones in bright red. "Look at it," I commanded, pointing at the screen. "That is not a tumor. That is a chemical implant. My husband, the great Dr. Marcus Thorne, put that inside me without my consent. He has been poisoning me for 2 years. He wasn't treating my dementia. He was manufacturing it. He turned his wife into a lab rat so he could steal her company." The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a held breath before a scream. And then the screaming started. The roar from the crowd hit me like a physical wave. It was not the polite applause of high society anymore. It was the sound of shock and horror. People were standing up, knocking over chairs, covering their mouths, as the image of the poison device inside me burned into their retinas. Marcus looked like he had been struck by lightning. He stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land, his face the color of old ash. He tried to reach for me again, but he saw the look in my eyes, and he shrank back. He knew. In that moment, he finally knew that the woman he had tried to erase was the one writing the ending to his story. But I was not finished. I turned my gaze toward the VIP table where my son and his wife sat. Dante had his head in his hands, trying to make himself invisible, but Tiffany was standing there, her face a mask of pure terror as she watched her golden ticket turn to dust. I pointed the microphone at her like a weapon. "And let us not forget the loving family who supported him," I said, my voice booming through the ballroom. "My daughter-in-law, Tiffany. The woman who stands there in a dress bought with my money, smiling like an angel while she houses a demon in her heart. You all think she is a devoted mother. You think she is a grieving daughter-in-law. Watch closely. This is what filial piety looks like in the Thorne household." I signaled Maya again. The screen flickered and the ultrasound vanished, replaced by high-definition video footage. It was the clip from the kitchen. The audio was crystal clear, amplified 1,000 times by the sound system. Tiffany's voice rang out shrill and cruel. "The old hag is finally losing it," she said on screen, swirling her wine glass. "Once we dump her in the facility next week and ship the brat to Arizona, the money is ours. I cannot wait to redecorate. That house smells like old people and desperation." Then the video cut to the pantry. A collective gasp tore through the room. On the massive screen, everyone saw my 7-year-old grandson Leo shivering on the floor in the dark, eating dry cereal out of a box, while Tiffany's voice in the background laughed about starving the pig until he learned to be quiet. A woman in the front row started to cry. The church elders looked ready to storm the stage themselves. The mask had slipped, and the ugliness underneath was on full display for all of Atlanta to see. That broke her. Tiffany let out a scream that sounded like an animal caught in a trap. She kicked off her expensive heels and charged the stage. Her face twisted into something ugly and unrecognizable. She scrambled up the stairs, her hands curved into claws, reaching for the microphone, reaching for my throat. "Shut it off!" she shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. "You crazy old witch, shut it off! You are lying! It is fake! Turn it off right now!" She never reached me. My security team moved like a wall of granite. Two large men in black suits stepped in front of me, catching her mid-lunge. They grabbed her arms, restraining her firmly as she flailed and kicked, screaming obscenities that made the mayor cover his wife's ears. I stood behind my wall of protection, untouched and unbothered. I looked down at her, struggling like a trapped rat. "Look at her," I said calmly into the microphone. She called me crazy. She called me unfit. But I think we can all see who the real lunatic is tonight. The heavy double doors at the back of the ballroom did not just open, they exploded inward. Sheriff John Miller marched in not as a guest, but as the hand of God. Behind him, a dozen officers in tactical gear fanned out, moving with the precision of a SWAT team sweeping a drug den. The gasps from the crowd turned into a stunned silence. This was not a party anymore, it was a crime scene. John walked straight to the stage, his boots heavy on the plush carpet. He did not look at me. He looked straight at the man who had thought himself untouchable. Marcus Thorne. He boomed his voice, filling the cavernous room without a microphone. "You are under arrest." Marcus tried to straighten his jacket, tried to summon the arrogance that had shielded him for decades. "John, this is ridiculous," he sputtered. "We are in the middle of a celebration. You are making a mistake." "There is no mistake," John said, pulling a pair of steel handcuffs from his belt. "You are charged with aggravated assault, medical malpractice, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder." Before Marcus could process that, two deputies moved on Dante. My son tried to blend into the crowd, trying to slink away like the coward he was, but there was nowhere to go. They grabbed him by the arms of his Italian suit. "Dante Thorne, you are under arrest for grand larceny, corporate embezzlement, and fraud." And Tiffany, still screaming in the grip of my security team, heard her own fate read out loud. Child endangerment. Conspiracy to kidnap and abuse of a minor. It was a symphony of justice. The sound of cuffs clicking shut was the sweetest music I had ever heard. But Marcus was not done. The reality of his downfall finally pierced his narcissism. He lunged, not at the police, but at me. He scrambled toward the edge of the stage, his face twisted in a rictus of hate and desperation. "Get away from her!" he screamed. "She is sick. She does not know what she is doing." Two officers tackled him. They slammed him to the floor hard. I heard the breath leave his body in a whoosh. My husband, the distinguished doctor, the pillar of the community, was pressed face first into the carpet, his expensive tuxedo gathering dust, his dignity stripped away. He lifted his head, struggling against the weight of the officers on his back. He looked up at me, his eyes wild. "Regina, tell them I am a doctor. I took care of you. Everything I did for your own good. I was saving you." I walked to the edge of the stage. I looked down at him from my tower of strength. I looked at the man who had shared my bed and plotted my death. The room waited for my mercy. They waited for the wife to forgive the husband. I leaned down just enough so he could see the fire in my eyes. "No, Marcus," I said, my voice ice cold and crystal clear. "You did not do it for my good. You did not do it because you are a doctor. You did it because you are a devil. And tonight I am sending you back to hell. Take him away, John. Get this trash out of my sight." 6 months have passed since the night the crystal chandeliers of the Ritz-Carlton witnessed the fall of the House of Thorne. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my master bedroom, adjusting the lapel of my white power suit. The woman staring back at me was not the frail ghost who had shuffled through these halls half a year ago. The gray pallor that Marcus' chemical poison had painted on my skin was gone, replaced by the rich, glowing cocoa of my natural complexion. Dr. Osei had performed the surgery to remove the implant the very next morning. It took 3 hours and 40 stitches, but the moment I woke up from the anesthesia, I felt lighter. The fog in my brain had evaporated. The weakness in my limbs had been replaced by a vitality I had not felt in decades. I looked 10 years younger, not because of expensive creams or spa treatments, but because I was no longer sleeping next to a snake. Justice moved slowly for some, but for Marcus Thorne, it moved like a runaway freight train. The judge was a woman who had no patience for men who used their power to abuse the vulnerable. She looked at the medical evidence, she watched the videos, and she gave him the maximum sentence allowed by law. 20 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. My husband, the great doctor, is currently trading his Armani suits for state-issue orange jumpsuits. As for Dante and Tiffany, they learned the hard way that actions have consequences. The family court judge watched the video of Leo shivering in the pantry exactly once before stripping them of all custody rights. They are currently serving 5 years of probation and community service. I heard Tiffany has to take the bus to her court-ordered sanitation job. I hope she enjoys the view. But I did not have time to dwell on their misery. I had an empire to rebuild. I walked into the King Crown boardroom at 9 a.m. sharp. The air conditioning was humming, but the men sitting around the long mahogany table were sweating. These were Dante's cronies, the crypto investors, the yes men, the sycophants who had helped him drain my operating capital into worthless digital tokens. They looked up when I entered, their eyes widening with fear. They had expected Dante or perhaps a bankruptcy lawyer. Instead, they got the queen herself. I did not sit down. I stood at the head of the table, my hands resting flat on the polished wood. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice steady and cold, "you bet on the wrong horse. You thought I was a senile old woman you could push aside. You thought you could loot my company while I was dying in a facility. Well, I am not dead. I am not senile, and you are all fired. Security is waiting in the hall to escort you out. You have 5 minutes to clear your desks. Leave your company phones, your laptops, and your key cards. And if I find so much as a paperclip missing, I will sue you for theft. Now get out." They scrambled out of the room like roaches when the kitchen lights turn on. The heavy door closed behind the last of them, leaving the room quiet and clean. I turned to the young woman sitting to my right. She was wearing a sharp navy suit, her braids pulled back in a professional bun, her eyes bright with intelligence and ambition. "Maya," I said, gesturing to the empty seat at the other end of the table. "The position of Chief Legal Officer and Director of Operations is currently vacant. Do you think you can handle cleaning up this mess?" She smiled the same sharp, knowing smile she had flashed when she handed me a bag of fried chicken and spy cameras. "Auntie," she said, opening her leather portfolio, "I already drafted the recovery plan for the lost assets and initiated proceedings to reclaim the funds from Chad Miller. I was born to handle it." I sat down in my chair, the leather warm against my back. The rot had been cut out. The foundation was strong again. King Crown was back in the hands of a king, and this time I was making sure the crown stayed exactly where it belonged. The morning sun felt warm on my back as I knelt in the rich, dark soil of the rose garden. It was a Saturday, the kind of lazy, golden morning that used to make me feel lonely in this big, empty house. But today the air was filled with the best sound in the world, the sound of a child laughing. Leo was chasing a butterfly near the hydrangeas. He was not the hollow-cheeked ghost I had found shivering in the pantry 6 months ago. His cheeks were round and full, his skin glowing with health and the summer sun. He was wearing denim overalls that were already stained with grass and dirt, and he looked beautiful. He looked like a child who knew he was safe. He looked like a king. Maya was sitting on the stone bench nearby, reviewing contracts on her tablet, but she kept looking up to watch him, her eyes soft and protective. She had moved into the main house last month. We decided the guest house was too small for the future of this family. She looked up and caught my eye, smiling that secret smile we shared now, the smile of soldiers who had survived the war and lived to enjoy the peace. I wiped my hands on my apron and stood up, feeling the satisfying ache in my muscles. This was good work. Honest work. Unlike the years I spent trying to hold together a family that was rotting from the inside out. I looked at my hands. They were wrinkled now, the skin loose over the knuckles, but they were still strong. These were the hands that signed the first loan for my first building 40 years ago. These were the hands that held Dante when he was a baby, and these were the hands that signed the statement that sent him to prison. I know what they say about me in town. I hear the whispers at the beauty shop and see the side eye at church. They say Regina King is cold. They say she is unnatural. How could a woman send her own husband and son to jail? How could she destroy her own family? I looked directly at you now. Yes, you, the one wondering if I went too far. They looked at a 65-year-old black woman, and they saw a victim. They saw a grandmother who should be sitting in a rocking chair, knitting blankets, and baking sweet potato pies for the church bake sale. They saw gray hair and assumed weakness. They saw silence and assumed compliance. They forgot who I am. They forgot that I did not inherit this empire. I built it brick by brick with my own sweat and blood. They forgot that you do not get to the top of the mountain by letting people walk over you. They mistook my kindness for blindness. They thought because I loved God, I would tolerate the devil in my house. I walked over to Leo and scooped him up. He squealed and wrapped his arms around my neck, smelling of sunshine and earth. This is my legacy now. Not the buildings, not the money, but this boy, this safety. I did what I had to do. I cut off the rot to save the tree. I sent the man I shared my bed with and the son I birthed to a concrete cell because they threatened the future of this innocent child. I chose the grandson who needed me over the son who betrayed me. The most profound lesson from this story is that family is defined by loyalty, not blood. We are often conditioned to believe that we must endure betrayal, disrespect, and even abuse simply because it comes from a spouse or a child. We are told to keep the peace, to be forgiving, to be the bigger person. But Regina King teaches us that there is a limit to grace. When the people who should be your protectors become your predators, you have a moral obligation to protect yourself and the innocent ones depending on you. Regina's strength wasn't just in building a multi-million-dollar empire. It was in the terrifying courage required to look at her husband and son and see them for exactly what they were, threats. She teaches us that self-preservation is not cruelty. Cutting off toxic family members isn't an act of hate. It's an act of survival. You do not owe anyone your life, your sanity, or your hard-earned legacy, no matter whose last name they share. Sometimes you must be willing to burn down the house to save the foundation. If you believe Regina made the right choice to choose her grandson over her husband, hit that subscribe button and share this story with a strong woman in your life.